Hey, good morning, everybody. Canceled the normal introduction today just to kind of do a quick day one review of the legislative session before I head back to the Capitol this morning to go to day two of the Wyoming 2026 legislative session. So, what happened yesterday at the Capitol? Well, if any of you were watching or paying attention, obviously we had the governor's speech, followed by the Chief Justice's speech. And then, of course, we had the sessions for both the Senate and the House, where they began considering legislation to bring to the floor. Now, because this is a budget session, any bill to be considered does have to have a two-thirds majority to come to the floor. And wow, if you guys watched yesterday, a lot of bills died. And I suspect today will probably not be too dissimilar. There are a lot of bills coming to the floors on both the House and the Senate starting this morning at 10 a.m. So I will be posting those links if you guys want to watch the sessions. I'll post those links below this video. But yeah, so what happened yesterday? Wow. So Mark Gordon obviously spoke. I think the main takeaway from Governor Gordon's speech was he was really hoping that the legislatures would restore any of the budget items that they were considering cutting. And it will remain to be seen here in the upcoming weeks what all will be in that budget and what will go. I think that he calls his budget the essentials. This is what he feels and thinks is essential for the people of Wyoming. Obviously, two hot button topics: the University of Wyoming and the Wyoming Business Council. By the way, in case you didn't see my stand on that, those are both items in which I support. Let's go ahead and cut some of that funding and let's actually get rid of the Wyoming Business Council in favor of privatizing the market and allowing the free market to really rule and reign in Wyoming. And that's what I'd really, really like to see happen. But that's obviously another subject. We can unpack that. You guys should really go back and get context and look at my previous show on that without just taking sort of that bland statement I just made. Go back and look at my why and the reason why I believe those things would be a really good idea. He obviously talked about keeping employees in the state and the need to raise state employee salaries. Right now, today, and this is I think it's a real challenge for Wyoming. Wyoming state employee salaries are on average, about 20% higher than their private market, or I should say, Main Street salaries. And so it's pretty tough, mentally to go, well, we're going to keep increasing state employee salaries so that we can keep good people while folks on Main Street, their salaries are still lagging behind quite a bit from those state salaries. And so there's a fine line there, and yet, if you look at the overall national picture, the governor's statement was correct. We are behind. But the real question is, how do we balance that with what our private sector is doing? And so it was a very, very interesting speech. He shouted out to many, many people in the room. He gave a beautiful shout out to his wife, which I believe was the most favored moment of the entire speech, was when he spoke about his wife and the Hunger Initiative and just the incredible, beautiful work that they've done there. So if you didn't get to see the speech yesterday, I really encourage you to go back and watch it. Obviously, there is a big difference between what Governor Mark Gordon wants and what the legislature wants in a lot of ways, depending on who you talk to. The people in general would really, really like to see government get smaller, would really, really like to see government spend less. Then there's that harsh reality of where do you find that balance between spending so much less that some of the basic things that you and I maybe enjoy start going away and stuff like that. So it's an interesting conversation. Encourage you to go back and watch the governor's speech. Now, I would argue that perhaps the Chief Justice's speech had a little bit more, well, I guess you could say hot button topic and or just sort of a conversation about government, position, power, the struggle going on. And this is in particular over their rulings in relation to abortion and life. The Chief Justice sort of spoke to the legislature and told them, do not change the separation of powers just because you don't like the results. And while I can agree with that in principle, uh, the issue here at hand, this life and abortion issue, when you look at the Wyoming Constitution, I kind of fault the Wyoming legislature for bringing us to this place. We talk about judicial activism and also their responsibility to follow their interpretation and or the interpretation of the law. And while I don't disagree that judicial activism doesn't exist, if you just step back at the role of the judicial branch, one might argue that, well, it seems like we have some problem in the law. So my main thing here is really not, I don't want to really go, they're right, they're wrong, or throw down the judicial branch or throw down the legislature. But what I want to do is say about this issue of life, which is what the judge's speech was basically all about, is if you don't like the results, don't change, you don't want to undermine the beautiful system of government that our forefathers set up in order to get what you want. And again, I kind of agree with that on principle. So, what do we need to do with this issue of life and abortion? I would call on the Wyoming legislature to do the hard work and to get this done the right way. What needs to happen is this definition of words. Elective abortion is not healthcare. If you look up the definition of healthcare, the treatment of disease and injury, or the prevention of disease, injury, and illness, or the treatment of those things. Pregnancy doesn't fall under the definition of healthcare in the sense of it's not a disease, it's not an illness, it's not an injury. Elective abortion is not healthcare. But we need to define these words in our Wyoming state constitution so that there is an understanding. And then we would not have this issue with the law, if you will. If we don't like it, we have the power to change it. So I would call on the Wyoming legislature to change the way and the definition of these words in our Constitution so that we can truly define the difference between elective abortion and non-elective abortion, and also the true meaning of health care in the great state of Wyoming. And I think that that's how we win this issue, if we want to do it that way. So her speech, that was kind of what went on there. And now what happened in the House? So a lot of us, there were a lot of bills that went through both the Senate and the House yesterday. And a lot of them died. A lot of those bills died. We saw most of the election bills. They did not make it through for one reason or another. There was one that made it through the House in regards to, random recounts, hand recounts for elections just to ensure election integrity. I was actually there was one particular bill where they wanted to almost triple the requirements for independent candidates in the name of election security and safety. In my mind, that was a bill which really was about consolidating party power. That was not about election safety and security, or, they're worried about diluting the vote and things like this. Well, guess what? We live in a free country. People should be able to run for office the way they want, and you shouldn't make it impossible for them to do that, which is what that bill did. So I was kind of actually glad to see that bill did not make it through. I have not seen the runoff bill anywhere yet, so I'm not sure if that's going to end up coming up or not. I know that was a big priority, especially for the GOP and for the Freedom Caucus. They really wanted to get that runoff bill in. Maybe we're not going to see that. A lot of other bills that died, basically all of the property tax bills died. I think except for one out of the Senate, potentially something related to a few exemptions. But almost all of that died. But what does that mean? So we will probably, because of that, the Wyoming legislature will likely not be taking up the property tax issue in whole this year. We will probably then see the People's Initiative coming to the ballot in November. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with the property tax issue. I would have liked to have seen a principled solution go through, but again, none of those really made it through. We saw an awful lot of other, different bills addressing different specific issues. A lot of them did not make it through. I encourage you guys to check the legislative calendars and information to see what didn't make it through. But yeah, we're looking like we're going to probably have a couple of more days of this, of bill consideration. Today, they'll be going through a ton of individual bills. I think it is literally probably close to in the hundreds. And my guess is we will probably see a lot of those because of the 2/3 majority required. We will probably see a whole bunch of those not make it onto the floor. So that's kind of what went on yesterday. If you step back and you look at what went on in both chambers, you can see pretty clearly that there was a lot of common sense bills that didn't make it. That probably would have been bills that are good for the people, but you see the different echo chambers and sort of how they operate on the floor. You've got of course, you've got the Democrats on the floor, then you've got the Freedom Caucus on the floor, and then you kind of have these two groups in the middle that their votes can go one of either way, just depending on what the issue is. And so there's not a lot of unity on the floor. And because of that, I think we kind of see the results that are going on, right now. So, um, the Bible says, this kind of came to my mind yesterday. The Bible says that a house divided against itself cannot stand. And as you look in our house and in our Senate, you see a lot of division. And as a result of that, I think what we're probably going to find in this session is it may be, lame duck might be kind of the wrong way to look at it, but it may be kind of where not a whole lot will get done. Oh, also on that note, the education recalibration bill also did not make it through that 2/3 vote that it needed. Does education need to be recalibrated? What I did an episode about this about a week ago. I don't think recalibration is the right answer because I believe that education needs to be completely redone. I think we're at a place where we could keep trying to fix it. We could keep trying to spend more money. We could keep trying to throw ideas at it or band aids. But can we actually fix the thing? And I think that that's where I kind of differ. While I while I like the principle of recalibration and what needs to be done there, and I can respect that principle, I believe we need to go a step further than just recalibration in order to truly fix public education. And so, I mean, I guess if I had a choice and I was sitting on the floor, I probably would have voted for the recalibration bill, but it doesn't really fix anything. And so that's kind of where I differ on that. It's like, guys, let's start fixing the thing. Let's stop throwing band-aids on the thing. And that's how I feel about a lot of the legislation that went through yesterday. It's like maybe guys, it's time to step back and start actually fixing some of these things instead of putting more band-aids on these things. And so that's kind of just my overall just sort of bird's eye view slash take on the first session, the first legislative day. Um, it was, it's kind of just a day where they were going through the motions, I think. And most of the things that I think the people were really kind of interested in, a lot of those ended up dying on the floor. There's a lot of stuff. There are quite a few bills that went through. I think a lot of those for most of us are, you know, small impact type of things, where it really it's more like stuff about like how government functions or how, different things in government programs, and things like that. Very little of what got through yesterday are sort of those things that you might say, affect our everyday lives. There's just very little of that went through. The one thing that did go through that I was grateful for, that as a parent, I have a parent of 3 young kids, is the obscenities in libraries bill. I really would like to see that bill pass. And yeah, I know the big argument is, well, it's a parent's responsibility. And I would say, no, not in this case. And here's why. I have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I should be able to go to the library. By the way, we love our library here in Laramie County, our Laramie County Library here in Cheyenne. It's amazing, by the way. If you ever come down here, you should come and check it out. But I should be able to turn my children loose in the kids sections of the library. I could sit and work and study, do whatever I need to be doing. My kids should be able to be turned loose to discover and explore and to learn. I should not have to worry about what they might pull off the shelf. The argument against taking these adult books out of the kids section of the library, in my opinion, is the definition of it's evil. It is evil. I'm going to call it what it is. It is evil. Why do you want and insist to keep this material in front of young kids? And you know what? This bill doesn't ask you to burn the books. It says go put it in an adult section where it belongs. You know, again, this the other part of this argument is, well, it's a parent's responsibility what their kids look at in the library. And I disagree with that, because I'd like my kids to be able to just be free and not myself having to worry about what they pull off the shelf. So I hope that bill actually gets through. It's common sense. It needs to be done. And we need to protect our kids in that way. And anyone who doesn't want to protect their kids in this way, I really want to question that, especially just from a political standpoint. Why is it necessary for children to be exposed to this type of material before their minds are even able to process it? So that bill is one that I certainly was glad to see through. But overall, again, a lot of those bills that you're seeing coming through that did survive, it's stuff that might affect some of our lives, directly, indirectly, in some way, but most of it was things that really wouldn't impact most of our daily lives, just as regular citizens that get up and go to work every day or take our kids to school and just do the everyday things. And so you see an awful lot of how are we tweaking and changing and modifying bureaucracy, in some cases, probably creating more bureaucracy. A lot of that seems to be important. So it'll be interesting to see. That was just day one. Today is day two of the legislative session. And I mean, who knows? It's anybody's guess where we're going to be next week. I mean, maybe next week we'll be working on the budget already. We'll see what happens. I know they do have a calendar out, but they've got to get through all these individual bills first. And there is a lot of them. I will do more review later, you guys, but I hope you guys have a blessed week. If you have a chance, I'll be posting all the links to watch the sessions, to listen to the sessions. I really encourage you guys to do that. If you happen to be around the Capitol, I will be around the Capitol a whole bunch. I'd love to talk to you. Love to see you. Love to chat. So with that, God bless you guys. I think it's appropriate for me to play the Wyoming Wind as we close out this show today. So have a little tune of the Wyoming Wind. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye now.
That welcome sign on I-25, paint ship still standing proud. Ranch hands lean on rustic gates, reading weather in the clouds. Antelope on the edges, coal dust on our jeans. Oryx blanking on the rim like a string of prairie dreams. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, making 20-foot wide. stacked up tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Red dirt stuck in busted boots, pickup rattling down 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese cutting clean. L tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the soul. You push our trash clear to Nebraska, strip a billboard to the nails, slam a screen door off its hinges, shake the grain out of the rails. You whistle through those cold cars, howl across the powder rim. Every fence line, every windburn grin, got carved by you again. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, make it 20-foot wall with white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till there's change of tide on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Dirt stuck in busted boots, pick up riding around 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese couldn't clean. Elk tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the song.